Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to welcome singer, songwriter, recording artist, spoken word artist, and author Marshall Chapman.
And now actor.
And now actress, right? And she's just released her newest album, Big Lonesome, as well as her second book entitled They Came to Nashville.
Right.
It's a great pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Who is Marshall Chapman?
What a question. Marshall Chapman is a 6-foot-tall, skinny, white girl from South Carolina who went to Nashville, who loves music, who at age 62 is still out there having like the year of her life. I'm having a lot of fun right now. If I'd known you could have this much fun at my age, I would have relaxed a lot more when I was in my 20s and 30s. But who is Marshall Chapman? I'm probably the last person to ask that. Tim Krekel said it best. The song we wrote, Sick of Myself, it started as an email from me to Krekel. I just was thinking, I really was sick of myself that day. And I was thinking, if I could be somebody else for a day, maybe two, who would it be? Tim Krekel. I'd like to know what it's like to be laid back and cool, to play that guitar the way that you do. Like your soul is connected to every string and the whole room starts swaying when you're playing that thing. And then 2 hours later, he emails me back. Well, I'm sick of myself. I'd like to be you. Would you trade places with me for a day, maybe two? And you asked the question, who is Marshall Chapman? I think Tim Krekel answered it in that song. He said, I'd like to know how it feels to be regal and tall, to charm a whole room with that Carolina drawl, to rock with a purpose like old Jerry Lee while wearing your soul on your rock and roll sleeves. And if there's ever a tombstone to mark my passing, those are the words I want to have on it.
Sometimes music says things so well.
Yeah.
So from the Marshall Chapman album, Big Lonesome,
Right.
Sick of Myself,
Right.
here on the Paul Leslie Hour. The beautiful thing about this album is that the songs, to me, they seem to be very cohesive.
Thank you.
I can relate to all of them. I didn't know Tim Krekel as well as you do, but
Right.
someone that knew him, they all seem to go together. So what do you think about the album Big Lonesome?
Well, I just think it's by far the best album I've ever made. And I tell people, first of all, I wasn't going to make another album. I was really burnt out. I was writing a book. I'm a contributing editor to Garden and Gun magazine. Weird name, I know. I have a column with Nashville Arts magazine. So I've been writing a lot of prose, and that seemed to be a very quiet, contemplative kind of life, and I was enjoying it. I was even joking, telling friends of mine that I tried not to write songs, because if I write them and they're good, I'm going to record them. If I record it and it's good, then my ass is back out on the road. I know how to nip that off in the bud. That was my thinking. And then Tim Krekel was diagnosed with cancer, died within 3 months of his diagnosis. He was my best friend in music, probably best friend, period, and we were very close. And it rocked my world, Paul, and the only thing that seemed to comfort me going through that experience of Tim's death was picking up my guitar. And every time I did, a song poured out. And when I wrote Tim Revisited, I just thought, I'm going to do an album, and I'm going to make the best album I can possibly make to honor my friend, and that's what I did.
So let's play it. Tim Revisited from
Right.
Big Lonesome. We're talking with Marshall Chapman. The album starts off with the title song, and in the liner notes it says that it was recorded in a Pullman car parked
Correct.
behind Union Station.
Correct. I mean, I had a friend, Tommy Spurlock. He's now down in Austin, Texas. But he actually was living in one Pullman car, and then right behind it was another Pullman car. And they were parked on a track right behind Union Station in Nashville. And he had converted one into living space and the other one into a recording studio. But even though he had the walls padded, when the trains would move in the train yard, you'd have to stop recording because the noise would bleed through the walls. So it was a real challenge to record there. But I think Dave Alling recorded an album there with him. And also the guy that wrote Wild Thing and Angel of the Morning, Chip Taylor, I think recorded an album there with Spurlock. He had it briefly, and then he kind of just took off for Austin and disappeared. And so when I decided to do this record, I didn't have a copy of the multi-track of that song, and I knew I wanted to include it I had gotten in contact with him, and he couldn't find it. He looked, he couldn't find it. So finally I sent him a check just for his troubles, and sometimes money talks, but within a week he had sent the ADAT of that, and we converted it to Pro Tools. And the amazing thing was when we were listening to it in the studio, I was co-produced this album with Michael Utley, who I love working with. And the reason I chose Michael was because Michael and I co-produced Love Slave, which is probably my favorite studio album until Big Lonesome, and now Big Lonesome is my favorite. But anyway, we went to the studio, and when we were listening to converting it to Pro Tools, I didn't realize Tim's voice. You know, we were just in the train just goofing off. We'd written a song. We were demoing a lot of songs, but I liked the way Big Lonesome sounded. And it's one of my 3 favorite songs. We've written a ton of songs together, but there are 3 that are my favorite that I've written with Tim. One is Big Lonesome, one is I Love Everybody, I Love Everything, and the other one is Sick of Myself, which actually I finished after he died. I mean, it was just an email, sort of love email from me to him and him back to me, and I kind of thought it should be a shuffle. And then when I decided to make the record, you know, I sat down and put it to music.
Just a moment ago, you mentioned Michael Utley, who co-produced the album. What's it like working with him?
Well, for me, it's just heaven. We work really well together. Mike's a very positive person, and he digs what I do. You know, I mean, I've always said happiness is hanging around people who dig you. I don't purport to be everyone's cup of tea, so happiness is hanging around people that like you. And I like Mike. We were neighbors at the time. He's since moved to California, much to my chagrin. But he lived right around the block. So I said, you know, I want to do this album to honor Tim. And, of course, we had all been in Buffett's band together. That's really when I got to know Tim Krekel. And I may be answering one of your subsequent questions. But we were in Buffett's band in 1987, and that's when I really got close to Tim. He was my favorite person to hang out with, because with Jimmy by then, there's a lot of days off.
Yeah.
So you're hubbing out of some city like Chicago or New Orleans, you know. Jimmy had it down by then. You'd be in some great hotel in New Orleans, and you'd hub out and go play Biloxi, and you'd go play Houston, and you'd play New Orleans, and you'd come back to the hotel with lots of days off in between gigs. So you got time to go to museums and go see movies, so we started hanging. He's just an easygoing guy.
My favorite song on the album is Falling Through the Trees.
Oh, you have good taste.
Yeah, I do. I pride myself on that.
You know, you have depth then. Thank you. Falling Through the Trees, actually, I wrote that when my last album came out, Mellowishes, which was sort of an experiment. And I was working with a guy that was sort of the synthesizer king of Nashville, and I learned a lot doing that record. And after doing that record, I was just convinced that this record would be completely organic. Falling Through the Trees, when I realized that last record wasn't going to make it, I was just heartbroken because I'd invested so much into it. And I just woke up one night in the middle of the night and wrote that song. And it's, you know, it's about the death of a dream. And the same theme really is the Cindy Walker song, Going Away Party. So I just thought they were great bookends. They just seemed to flow so well one into the other. But Falling Through the Trees, if there's one line, you know, I'm sitting there talking about the heartbreak of when dreams die, but the line that saves it is, I wouldn't have it any other way. That keeps it from sliding into victimhood. Right. And I wouldn't have it any way. But it's cool that you mentioned that, because William Gay, the novelist, who's my favorite writer in America, he listened to the album early on, and that was his favorite, Falling Through the Trees. And he's the deepest cat I know.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I think nobody said it better than Todd Snyder when he said the album is sad but not hopeless.
Yeah, like Blood on the Tracks.
Oh, I thought that was a perfect description of this album.
Yeah, Todd's like my brother. I love him.
One of the other songs on the album is a cover of Hank Williams' I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry.
Well, you know, I was down in Mexico. Tim and I were supposed to go to Mexico and play a bunch. We had a bunch of gigs booked for that summer, and he died June 24th or June 26th, 2009. And we were supposed to go to Mexico and play some gigs. I have a benefactor in Mexico that flies me and my husband down there and puts us up in a house with, like, a cook, maid service, pool, all that. I mean, and it's on a mountain overlooking San Miguel, which San Miguel is on a high mountain plain at 10,000 feet. And people think, you're going to Mexico in July? You wear a sweater at night. It is so fabulous. It's so magical. And it's always been a magnet, that town, for poets and dreamers. It's where Jack Kerouac used to hang out there. In fact, Neil Cassidy That's where he died, in San Miguel. He got hit by a train down there. It still is a real magnet, but help me keep on track, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so I got down there. Tim, the promoter, my benefactor / promoter, when Tim died, we had a plane ticket for him and Debbie to fly down there with us. He said, I can understand if you wouldn't want to come down tonight. I said, I need to come to Mexico. I'm coming. So I wrote that song down to Mexico on the plane flying down there. And when I got down there, I played a benefit, and then I played a private party at this guy's house, and a benefit called Feed the Hungry, or Feed the Children. Yeah. And Tim was supposed to play it with me, and I played it by myself. But after the second gig, this expatriate from Mississippi, and there's a song there called Mississippi Man in Mexico that was also written. I wrote that on the plane flying home. But we went out to this rancho outside of San Miguel, Rancho Jaguar, and we get there. It's in this field where this guy he cultivates cactuses that he ships all over the world. And he's from Mississippi. He's also a great cook, and he had dug all these pits. They had mesquite logs burning in them, and when we got there, they were hot coals. And he had all these doves he had shot that he'd wrapped with bacon, and he was roasting them over those mesquite logs. And he just prepared this feast for us. And it was just one of those nights, there's no light pollution down there. We're out in the country, and you could see all the stars, and the moon was full. And I leaned back after that meal, and this one little single cloud in the sky moved across the moon, and it turned purple. And I thought about Hank Williams. And in that moment, I wanted a guitar to materialize in my hands because I wanted to sing that verse, and I'm so lonesome I could cry. The moon just went behind the cloud to hide its face and cry. And I was thinking about that song because I used to sing it. I used to sing all these songs. I used to know about 350 songs by heart before I started writing my own songs. I would play in lounges and sing these songs. And I'm so lonesome I could cry was one of them. But ever since I started writing songs, I quit singing them. And so that night, I'm at my benefactor's house with his teenage son, Mark, and there was a guitar there, and I just started singing all these songs I used to sing just to see if I could still remember them before I started writing songs like Stay All Night, Stay a Little Longer, Bob Wills, songs like Bye Bye Love, the Everly Brothers, songs like Don't Be Cruel, Elvis Presley, songs like Every Day by Buddy Holly, For the Late by Robert Johnson, To Be Alone with You by Bob Dylan, all these songs I just love. And I couldn't remember the words to I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, so his son downloaded them off the internet. And for the next few nights, we were staying in this house that had this big courtyard, and it had great echo in it, like natural echo, like in Sun Records. And I'd get up with this, I had my guitar with me, and I'd sing I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry in there, and it just sounded so great, and it was exactly how I felt because my friend had just died. So I just knew, when I wrote Mississippi Man in Mexico, I knew that song was going to come right after it, and it just seemed so, they sounded so good together. And
you nailed it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me, and I put that augmented chord in there, and I don't think anybody, I know Hank didn't have it in there, but there's been probably 300 people to record that song, but I think B.J. Thomas's version was pretty good, but I've had a lot of people tell me that this version is their favorite. Somebody said it's their favorite along with B.J. Thomas's, but I think when we recorded this, man, it felt so good. I felt that Hank was probably smiling.
Wow.
Yeah, I felt like we did it justice. And I do feel like that song has the most beautiful quatrain ever written in a song, which is the silence of a fallen star lights up a purple sky. And as I wonder where you are, I'm so lonesome I could cry. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I probably answered 3 or 4 of your questions.
Great answer, I think. Great story.
All right. What you got?